What is art?
Art is a process of discovery that gives human beings an opportunity to dive deep into their imagination and come back with information, thoughts, ideas, energy that we can share with each other. And these can be depictions of our psyche, they can be pathways to our emotional body, or they can be windows into our psyche. It comes to us in many different forms, be it the dance of a dancer's dance, or on a potter's wheel, or through the photographic lens. It always creates itself anew, and similar to a snowflake, it never repeats itself.
Would you say your own art fits into one of these movements? Or do you prefer not to label your art style?
I prefer not to label my artwork. My audience, and I've always agreed with them, have always said that my work exists outside of any spectrum of any organized catalog or labeling that exists so far. And if anything, I'd like to be bringing in new information and deal with new mysteries that sort of redefine our current idea of what is possible, as opposed to fitting into any sort of mold or movement that exists so far. Yes, absolutely. I do believe that there is a big difference there. I mean, I could be drinking a glass of wine and eating a chocolate brownie, and I could wipe my mouth on a napkin, and it could look like an abstract Mona Lisa or the Last Supper. But, it may look even a lot better than some of the art that exists out there in the art world. But I would be personally more inclined to give my respect and my intrigue and my appreciation towards pieces of artwork that have passion, have integrity, have pursuit of practice, and have these sorts of skilled base practices in place. Two of my favorite art pieces are generally the last two that I just made. That's one answer that I always like to use. But right now this room is filled with many of my favorite art pieces. One of them specifically is this one called Blessed Nest, and this one's called Organic Mechanics. But what makes them my favorite is that they were made at a time when I was taking a lot of risk and really committing myself as a photographer and an artist. So besides the fact that they encapsulate fully what I'm trying to do with the medium, they have a lot of personal flavor in there that I always recognize. I learned to photograph in Mexico City in 1997. I grew up in Mexico. It was in my second year of my high schooling that I learned to photograph. Photography class provided a much needed creative break to some of the dull droning and mind control that I was experiencing in my other classes. You see, the thing that creativity does is that it gives us an outlet to be able to bring forth our true nature. And this is something that was much more in alignment with me than debating world finances or solving a math equation. I work from home predominantly, and I've got a few different workspaces on my property. At the back of my property, I've got a building construction workshop area that consists of about 7 small little rooms. It's very much like a labyrinth. It's a very interesting construction. And I do a lot of my phase 1 building, categorizing, painting, these sorts of things out there. I've just converted one of my larger bedrooms inside as one of my studios that I use to actually assemble, and I work under the lights in there. And I've also got a study space that's got all my my electronics, my computer, my printers, my pre and post-production process happens in there. So I've got a few different spaces, and they're all at my home. I go about starting a new piece of artwork by, first of all, relaxing, breathing, being grateful for my life. I try to get myself calm and into a meditative sort of state so that I'm dropping into myself, and then I'm ready to allow myself to work in service for a greater good. I do things like smudging. I clear my space and I clear myself by burning white sage or palo santo or tree saps. that help to clear me and to get me present and ready. My creation process requires me to constantly be collecting objects. What I do is I go through lots of people's hard rubbish and I collect lots of different things that I then use to construct temporary sculptures out of. And these temporary sculptures exist only for me to photograph them. So it's sort of a mixed media process involving sculpture and then photography. Yes, absolutely. With this sort of art-making process, many times you are guided to make the art as opposed to you making the personal decision. And with my process, it requires a lot of collection of things and categorization, structure, and organization before I can actually do things. So I'm constantly on the lookout for actors, if you will, that I could use in my process. I try not to actually enter the studio until I'm feeling in the zone, but sometimes you don't have that luxury. I get my inspiration from source energy. I align myself with my ancestors and with my guides. I draw on the powers of sacred geometry. I draw on my experiences with entheogens, with plant teachers, plant medicines, and all the tools therein. I've been very influenced by surrealist artists and artists that have come before me. And these are my influences. This is where I draw my inspiration from.
Can anyone learn to be an artist? If so, how?
I think that if I'm an artist, that anyone could be an artist. I think that it takes a certain amount of dedication and it takes a certain amount of balancing and a certain intention to actually have your art viewed on an international level, to have your art appreciated by many people, and to have it in many venues and these sorts of things. But I believe that anyone can tap into creative skill and become an artist. I think that Western culture could learn a lot by embracing Aboriginal art and Aboriginal culture some more. As a foreigner to this land, just a quick story, I was sitting at the airport in San Francisco looking at a Qantas plane that was covered with seemingly Aboriginal art. And I was very excited to see how the indigenous culture and the Western culture would get along given this information. But soon after I arrived here, I came to realize that the truth is quite different, and that it was more of a marketing ploy than anything else. I love abstract arts. My artwork affiliates itself to abstract art in many ways. I appreciate how color, shape, texture, form, and repetition can create harmony within themselves and interrelationships with one another outside of what the definition of something is. I used to have a lot of resistance to digital art. As a photographer, when things started to change into digital, a lot of us had trouble getting with the program. But now I love digital art. I love the tools that it has. I love it. I love living in a digital age and the possibilities that come with it.
Do you have any advice for people wanting to tap into their creative side?
Yes, definitely. I would invite people to clear their intention as to why they are wanting to make art. I would invite them to follow their highest excitement, so follow their true heart's desire and their pure joy, and that will help to lead them and guide them in the right direction when it comes to artistry and the creative process. Creativity is a fire that burns inside of all of us, and something that we all have access to. Creativity comes about when there's a problem that needs answering, when there's a goal. Once there's a goal, then we use our creative process to get us there. Well, it's an interesting question because history tends to be written by the person who won the war and the person who has the money. So I would say that some art pieces could be accurate depictions, but it all depends. It would all depend. I think that art is art, and its worth is in the mouth of the beholder. When it comes to beauty and aesthetics, it's an interesting thing because I might like the red couch, but you like the blue couch, even though both of those couches are very well made and quite beautiful, and it comes down to personal choice. But there's some things that we could collectively agree on. When looking at nature and nature in balance with itself, we can all agree that the waterfall is beautiful or the sunset is gorgeous. I think that definitely someone whose life mission is to sell 20 used cars a week to people who don't actually need it versus the person who is going to take a 10-day silent retreat in order to find out how to move forward on their next art project would definitely engage life in a different way and have different thoughts. But that said, collectively, we are all very, very similar as well.